I have some statistical data with me here. This belongs to 2018, and this is what some of the employees had to say about the emails that they receive, and some of the very cliched expressions that are being used in professional context, which sort of puts off people who are at the receiving end. When we are drafting mails or crafting mails, as these are two different words that go with email writing. So we never realize, we seem to be, we think that we are going in the right direction, and whatever we are talking about is very, very appropriate and very professional, right? Okay, so these were some of the responses. People who are not very happy with this expression, not sure if you saw my last email. Why do you think there is an objection to this kind of an expression? Why would people find it unacceptable or offensive, or whatever is the response for the reasons for which they hate it? They don't accept this kind of an expression. Not sure if you saw my last email. By this expression, you're sort of presuming that the other person is not as committed to work as you are. You seem to have missed certain details, and you are not as committed as I am. You're not looking into emails. So thereby, you are actually pointing a finger and you're sort of poking that person and telling that person that he has not done his job right. Okay, so surely there's going to be an objection to that. And per my last email, so this probably because of the grammatical expression, the abruptness of it all, people don't like it. Per our conversation, it's not even as per our conversation or as per my last email, right? Even that would not be acceptable, but still, it is not even a complete phrase. Any updates on this? Why would people find it objectionable? You're straight away, asking for the point on which probably that person has not responded or has not submitted the work which is in progress. So people take objection to that. Sorry for the double email. It's very obvious that you are once again trying to remind that person that he has not responded, and so you're once again writing to him, and that won't be taken very well. Please advise, very abrupt a statement of this nature by just indicating this phrase, and then giving listing out and asking people, very abrupt in nature. As previously stated, a very redundant and cliched statement. As discussed, once again a very cliched statement. Reattaching for convenience. When you keep dumping people's mailbox with too many attachments, you're actually filling up their space, and that is not acceptable at all. So you look at people's responses to what are the expressions that they hate. Some of us at least seem to be using these phrases very, very often. And we know that we are not doing it the right way, and what could be objectionable about it. So when we're talking about professional communication, let's first try to understand what is being professional and what is being following etiquette. Are they one and the same, or are they different? Why is it that we titled our session as professional email etiquette? Okay. Professional emails and email etiquette. That's how we named it. That's how we titled the session. So is there any difference between professional emails and email etiquette? Do they go hand in hand, or are they separate entities that we need to understand? Can you please respond? Is professionalism the same as etiquette, is what I asked.
Can be separated, but it may go hand in hand.
It may go hand in hand. it should go in hand, or it may go in hand.
Not always it should, but it may go.
It may go hand in hand. So when we're talking about etiquette, what do we understand of etiquette, the term etiquette? And who sets these standards for us? What is etiquette? Manners, someone has written, disciplined behavior. But when we are talking about manners, both are similar. Etiquette is something we should follow to interact through mail. Certain standards which are set. Dr. Rajeshri says, part of presentation, ways of communicating professional. Now, when you're talking about etiquette, it is a way of structuring our lives in a way that not only retains our self-esteem, but also retains the self-esteem of the other person. You're looking at the win-win situation. You take care of aspects like courtesy and consideration of the others, and you also take care of your own requirements in the process. There's no compromise as such, but we are trying to sort of finely balance it out. Let me just give you an example of what could be etiquette in a more practical, giving you a more practical example of it. Someone walks into my cabin, right? And then I'm sitting in my own cabin, and then he comes and right in front of me, and then he sort of, perches himself very comfortably on the chair, right? And then he goes behind in the chair and then relaxes, and he's doing all kinds of things. He's free to do what he wants, but in his own room. But when he comes here into my cabin and demonstrates that kind of a body language, it sort of makes me feel uncomfortable. So anything which is going to make another person feel uncomfortable or not feel good about himself, or it is something which is derogatory to him, that would not be acceptable. So anything which is not acceptable to the other person, right, which in essence tries to make him seem small, or you're trying to dismiss him off, that would be against the etiquette. Etiquette would be where you're able to take care of your own requirements along with the requirements of the others, then you're sort of balancing. We are not talking about manners, because now in today's age and time, people are going to ask you, now who decides on the manners part of it? We will do what we want. But in the process of our professional behavior, professional life, what we need to look at is, in the process of reaching our goals, we also need to ensure that we are not interfering into the requirements of the others, to feel good, to have their self-esteem, to their dignity in place. So that is the reason why we are talking about etiquette along with professionalism. So professionalism might actually, all those steps might help you to achieve your professional goals. But in the process of it, we need to realize that we need to focus on being very courteous and very considerate to people with whom we are working. And it could be your colleagues, it could be your subordinates, it could be your higher-ups. Anyone in today's professional life would want to be treated with a lot of respect and courtesy, right? So that's the reason that we need to incorporate courtesy and consideration into our emails. Now, let's go back to the two slides that we had left behind and come. Now, this is about the time that one can take in order to respond. The maximum time that one can take to respond to a mail is between 24 hours and 48 hours. So what does it basically tell you? You never you don't have to respond to any email or write any email in a hurry. Always take your time, because much like our videos which are taken in today's times, anywhere and everywhere you have videos, and they become a kind of a legal record of what has transpired. Emails are also very, very similar in nature. Anything which is written by you becomes a kind of a document to probably for a lot of people to take action against you if need be. People are not going to respond to your emails immediately, but when the time arises, they sort of become like legal documents, like they become evidences to take legal action against you. And so the first lesson that we need to understand about emails is never be in a hurry while drafting emails. Take your time, especially they happen to be very, very important mails. You need to be very, very calm, composed, right? Think very logically, analyze before you draft any kind of a mail. You have enough time to respond unless they're urgent mails. Even then, you need to calm yourself with a glass of water and then draft your mails if they're urgent. But otherwise, for any given normal mails, very strategic mails, if you're responding to, you need to take your time to draft your mails. Whether you are initiating the conversation or communication, or somebody else has initiated and you're just responding to that communication, this is the key to writing or drafting very, very impactful mails, and mails which will only see your professional growth and not the downward graph professionally. Now, what is to flag a mail? Answering that question, anything which is important, which you think is very important, you sort of flag it so that it is easier for you to keep track of what is important. The minute I see a red flag, I know it belongs to a certain category. If I see a yellow flag, I know it belongs to another category, but these are all important mails. But that doesn't mean that we mark everything as important mails. That will only leave us very confused. And segregation of mails, probably by, you can have a folder for if there are people who are very often writing to you. Each of those people can have a folder wherein you sort of, save all those mails. It's easier for people to track if you're going to segregate mails by their names. It's not possible to do it for everyone, but yeah, for those people with whom you're interacting on an everyday basis, right? So in order to track your mails amidst all that sea of mails that you receive every day, a lot of spam and junk mails that you keep receiving, it becomes a very easy process. So remember the flags, and then you'll remember the other part to it also, that you also create folders and segregate so that your the transaction of communication that has happened, it's very, very easy to track it. Now, some of the jargon that you should be aware of in terms of emails is, this is of course something that you're all aware of, most of them. FYI is for your information. Please find attached. Okay, whenever you're sending along a document, that's something that is used. So before I go ahead with the rest, let me just give you a little bit of a warning about this. We don't use any kind of jargon in the mails. Now, these are, whatever we are discussing here are accepted jargon. Accepted in the sense everyone or most people in the professional context are aware of this. So using this kind of a jargon is okay. But if I'm going to come up with my own kind of jargon, or the SMS language which is used by the youngsters, very young people nowadays on social media, that wouldn't be accepted. In professional context, whatever is the jargon which is accepted, that's absolutely fine. You call it acronyms or jargon, however you would like to remember these. ASAP is something that is once again used as soon as possible. Attention, ATTN, and then not applicable would be just NA. End of day would be EOD. COB is close of business. Both are synonyms. You can use it however you want, end of day or close of business. Both refer to the same time. I think I have just repeated, please find attached. As early as possible, AEAP. That's another term that is often used. Now, this was in the general context of emails that I was telling you about all these terms. So you can, anything else that you would like to add on here, you can add on. Something that you normally use, and if I have missed out here on something, you can always add here. Anyone? Anyone here who would like to add? Okay, Raghavi says FYR. For your reference? Yeah, fine. Yeah, yes. What is this KR? FYKR, knowledge and reference, is it? ASAP, we've already mentioned that. Yeah, very good. As soon as possible also we have done. Not available, is it? I think we need to be very careful about this NA then. If one refers to not applicable and another one refers to not available, right? There could be a confusion. So in whichever context we are, accordingly we will need to use it. These would become very abstract acronyms there. Being very abstract in your communication is not something that is encouraged. So you need to be clear there. Thanks in advance, okay, TIA. All right. By the way, BTW. All right. Okay. Regarding. Okay, fine. Fair enough. Fantastic. What about this stat? Can you just tell me, Kansha Sharma?
Turnaround time.
Come again?
Turnaround time.
Turnaround time. Okay. All right. Okay, fine. All right. So now we move on to subject line acronyms that we use. Some of the subject lines are written in such a way that you don't need to write the content of the mail at all. Okay. So, for example, when I have nothing else in the content, for example, I'm calling my team for a meeting. Okay. My subject line could be this, meeting in conference hall for HR department at 2:30 p.m. Okay, then I can write venue. Venue I've already given 2:30 p.m. Okay, I can write end of message. I don't need to write any other content over there. Okay, so it makes it very easy. Sometimes you don't have too much and it becomes very redundant to keep repeating information, especially for internal mails, where you don't have to, you're not sending it across to outsiders. These courtesies, you don't have to really bother too much about it. You're very busy with your schedule and you really don't have time. You can just write in the subject line itself, whatever you want to communicate, you can write it over there. And then right at the end of it, you just put a hyphen and say EOM. Everyone understands that's the end of the message. Okay. Meet me, for example, another one could be this is another example. Okay. So you need not write the entire email for that. You can just end it with the subject line. So this is absolutely accepted in a professional context. Okay, so when you are not in the office, you are not expected to respond to any emails, right? Or you can simply say that you're out of office. The triple O stands for out of office. That can be the subject line. People understand when you write triple O that you're out of office. You can use this term PRB in the subject line. Once you write the content, usually you're taught that subject has to be with something with reference to the content, right? But it could also be about the action that is expected of that person, the receiver, at the end of reading your mail. Okay, so he wants a reply referring to the contents, by which time he specifies the time. So PRB, please reply by, and then he can just write the time alone, the time and the date alone. Okay, so then he is actually getting the focus of that person on what he is expected to do after reading the email. So that becomes very clear. And sometimes you're passing on information or writing mails to people, or copying people on those mails only because they need to be informed about something. So in such cases, you can just say no reply necessary. So this is just for your information. That's what you're trying to say. So in the subject line, tell them that you don't want any response to that, so that you are not in turn dumped with too many mails. So you sort of make it very clear that you are not expecting any kind of response. Otherwise, especially when people up in the hierarchy write to subordinates, somehow the team members tend to feel obliged to respond, because a higher up has written and, you need to, it's only courtesy that you need to respond. So you can sort of clear it out for them by saying no reply necessary. You write it in the subject line so that you are also not burdened with those mails, and they are also not burdened with that, the responsibility of responding to a higher up. For your information can be written even in the subject line. Okay, and action required, AR, is written by which time, okay, on what, that is what is written over there in AR. End of day, close of business, okay, you want something, so you can just write that after you write EOD or COD hyphen, what is it that you are expecting that person to write. So the subject lines also have some specific acronyms which are used. So using these would make your entire process of communication pretty easy and not very burdensome, right? When some of the do's and don'ts, let's just discuss these now. So when you're responding to someone's mail, okay, it's a reply mail, please don't change the subject line. Why should you not change the subject line? Tell me. What happens if I change the subject line? Suppose you've written a mail to me and you had a subject line. But when I'm responding to the same mail, I change the subject line. What happens in that case? Diversion, very good. Kupaswamy Desikan, yeah, very fantastic. Thought connectivity will be lost, very good, Naveen Kumar. And then trail is lost, very good. All of these are absolutely right, bang on. So for our own, sake, we need to ensure that people take cognizance of the mail or the response that we have given to a particular mail. So if I need to take cognizance of it, you need to write the same subject line as I had written. Then immediately I make a connect. Okay, this is a response to the mail that I had sent. So I'm curious to know what has been written, right? So one is my own ego, which is satisfied because you've not changed the subject line. But otherwise, what happens? I sort of take it easy and say, okay, this must be regarding something else. And I may not give it immediate attention that I should be giving, actually. This is something that most people might be knowing. So we don't write mails in capital letters. And what does it tantamount to? Writing in caps. No, not stressing. Not stressing. Sounds like yelling. Okay, fantastic. Very good. Okay, so it's about, this is equivalent to shouting. That's how it is read in communication. When you write it all in caps. What about red letters? Some people have the habit of changing the entire font into red color. What does this indicate? Alert, okay. No. Important, no. Alarm. Anger and urgent, very good. So it is, red is always associated, the colors are associated with a certain emotion. Anger is what it is associated with. So once again, it is equivalent to shouting or, anger, or basically that is the emotion that is being represented. Small fonts, all small fonts. You call it uppercase and lowercase. So if you use only lowercase, how is that read? Not very important, okay. Casual, fantastic, Dr. Sammy. Yeah. So it's taken very casually. Why? Why is it taken casually? Why should lowercase letters be taken very casually? Because you're not even making that little bit of effort that is required to change uppercase and lowercase appropriately as per the rules of grammar. So you're being absolutely casual, with an approach, with an attitude of laziness, that being very laid back, that you're writing. So it may not be very important, is how I would read it. So routine, yeah. So that also is very important, not important. Fantastic, right? That's something that needs to be avoided. Large chunky paragraphs. I actually was trying to find an example of that, but let me see if one of the mails that I have as samples, if I'm able to point out to that. It's not really a chunky mail, but a lot of times you see people don't divide their mail into paragraphs. There's a large chunk of information which is there. Okay, there is no addressing and there is no closing. There's just a large chunk of information which is sent, not divided into paragraphs. How do you feel about those kind of mails? Why should you not write those kind of mails? Time consuming for us to read, okay, fair enough. The reader will lose their attention, fantastic. Difficult to concentrate, very boring, very good. Lost of interest, fantastic. Yeah, so those are the reasons. So if you want the primary purpose, if I'm making that concerted effort to draft a mail, it is with a purpose, right? So if I'm going to be defeated in my purpose, what is the point of it all? I may not write it as well. So if I'm seeking some kind of action from that receiver, I better divide the email into paragraphs and easy to read, more than paragraphs. Sometimes it's, I keep telling people that it's easier when you just write 2 or 3 sentences in a paragraph. You don't have to go by the traditional rule. Wherever possible, you divide it into paragraphs of concepts or a thought process which is being expressed. But even if it is not possible, divide it so that it's easier, especially when you're constantly looking at these emails on the system. It's sort of quite strenuous to keep reading this information. So divide it into paragraphs, space out the paragraphs. That's something that needs to be done. Let there be enough space, line spacing and paragraph spacing. Both should be followed. And address the person and you sign off. All of these are essential for an email. So address the person, divide the content into paragraphs, and then close the sign off, close the email by signing off. All of these are very, very important. And while writing paragraphs, ensure there is line spacing and go by paragraph spacing also. it becomes easy for people to read and comprehend information. Abbreviations, whatever is accepted, whatever is commonly used, you can use. Don't create your own abbreviations. Not something in every sector. Healthcare sector must be having certain abbreviations. IT sector has certain abbreviations. Manufacturing sector has abbreviations, right? So all of these are accepted in your own sector, but outside that you should not use. Yes, sir.
Ma'am, I think the sense I'm getting is that for a lot of email etiquette, a lot of email basics are about attention grabbing, right? Because you want to differentiate yourself from, I guess, the 100 other messages that sit in the inbox of an extremely busy clinician or healthcare practitioner in some form or the other. The second part is, once you've gotten their attention, how do you impress upon them so that when the audience or the recipient of the email absorbs the thing, that they have a higher desire the next time to read an email from the same person. So the level of excitement or interest has to increase. So when I look at things like large chunky paragraphs, the rule of thumb that I'd learned is no more than one paragraph with action points at the bottom, but with a headline at the top. Are those still the right attention grabbers? Because I kind of feel that etiquette versus the attention grabbing sometimes go a little bit head to head.
Okay, so your attention grabbing can be equated to the marketing techniques that are followed. Basically, that's what happens in marketing. You're just trying to grab people's attention. So there they follow what is called the AIDA method. AIDA method is about grabbing the attention of the people, creating an interest for them in what's happening, whatever you're communicating. And that interest transforms into a desire, and desire transforms into action. They're performing the action. Okay, so this is achieved only by practice. It's not always easy for us to, follow this pattern. To create an interest, what do you do? Then appropriately, depending upon what, in which sector I am in, what is it? What is the content that I'm talking about? Accordingly, my concept of what is going to create an interest for them is going to change. And that interest slowly, what is an interest and what is a desire? Desire is an intense feeling, a lot more intense feeling for wanting something, right? And when that interest transforms into a desire, desires are mostly, you try to, achieve those desires, or realize those desires, and you tend to perform that action. So what exactly are the carrots that you're dangling for your receiver is what is very important in such cases. Now, most of the time, these are very routine mails sometimes that we are indulging in on an everyday basis. So you don't have to really look at the interest part of it or attention grabbing part of it. All that you will have to do is probably draft mails which are very, very clear, right? And that's the reason that you have paragraphs in emails, or whether it's an email or a letter that you're talking about. So you first set the context. Who are you? What is it about that you're writing? The second paragraph gives the details. Third paragraph very specifically talks about what is the action expected at the end of it. If it is just for his information, I will probably write it over there that this is just for information. But otherwise, if I'm expecting an action, a particular action, I want him to submit the report by a certain time. I want him to ensure that he goes and visits a patient and satisfies that patient's anxiety, right? Or satisfies that patient's anger. Then that is what I'm going to write about in the last paragraph of the letter, right? So whatever is the action that I'm seeking, that is what I need to write about in that. So this is a very clear template which is there for any kind of mails. So when that is said, automatically communication is effective because you are getting the outcomes that you're expecting. My objective is clear, my outcomes are very clear. When those are very clear, then I automatically achieve whatever I want to achieve through those means. Yeah. Okay. So I think this was about the abbreviations part of it. Thanks for all the responses. You're right that whatever is accepted in your sector, you can use those abbreviations. But otherwise, if you want to be very clear and you are very particular about not being abstract in your communication, but being very concrete in your communication, you can always write the entire sentence. Nothing which is compelling us to use the email jargon or email acronyms. So you wanted to say something, Dr. Ravi? So how do you address people? There's a lot of confusion regarding this. Most of the time, people are very either too casual or too formal in their communication. So the most accepted one is dear, sorry, dear, okay, Dr. Vasant, okay, or dear Dr. Prema, all right. So these are the ways in which you address, or you can also address them as dear sir, okay, dear ma'am, right? But ensure that when you're addressing the person, this is always in uppercase, this also is an uppercase, this is an uppercase, and this is an uppercase. Don't forget to do that. Don't think it's just name, it doesn't matter. I begin with a cap, I don't have to continue that. That should not be the approach. You need to write all of them in caps, right? So it's importance that you're giving, and you're not taking that person casually. So that's the reason that you're doing this. Okay, Poonam Shukla says only sir and madam. Okay. You can write the names also. There's no problem. If you happen to know those people, you can write their names. Unless you feel a sense of great respect, you don't have to use respected sir. You don't normally use this. Okay, so you can just say dear doctor or dear Mr. If you're just writing to other professionals, you can just write dear Mr. Sorry, Mr. Raghav. All right. So this is how you address. And most of the time, there's no punctuation. You don't have to bother about punctuation at all. So after Vasant, you don't have to follow it up with a comma. You can just go ahead with the next one, because we live in a system of systems. You know, you're working on in some gadget or the other. They're not letters which are handwritten. So given that, since it's a digital medium, we don't bother to use any of the punctuation, only in the text, because that will create confusion. If you don't use the punctuation there, you're going to mess up with the entire content. So there you need to use. But the rest of it, the formatting that you're following, you know, after you sign off as best wishes or best regards, warm regards, all of these are accepted. No more the case of yours sincerely, yours truly, those need not be followed at all. You can just say, very simple, if they happen to be senior to you in your designation or senior to you in age, you say best regards. The others, colleagues and subordinates and people of your same designation, you can just write it as best wishes. So these two can be the easy, you know, don't complicate your life by using different ways of signing off. You just say best wishes and write your name, and that will be more than enough, right? So these are the various ways in which you can right? Ma'am or madam also is fine, right? And when it comes to ladies, when you're talking about other professions, please write it as dear Ms. This is more like a unisex prefix that is used for women. Most women wouldn't want to be addressed as Miss or Mrs. So this is a term which is a prefix which is used for women in professional context. Dear Miss, yeah, so this is how it is addressed. Okay, so that's about the addressing part of it. So you should know, you should have certain traces. I think someone has raised there. Yeah, please, Anne.
Yes, ma'am. But I just want to ask, like, sometimes when internationally contacting any speakers or for the first time, maybe, or maybe I have met once or twice. So addressing, like, suppose dear Barnali, dear Padma Shri, for the first time or for the second time I may have met. So is it we have difference in opinion, because I prefer to name like dear so and so rather than dear Dr. so and so or dear Mr. so and so, and doctor again but many of my colleague finds this not correct, like first time writing with name.
No, it's fine if you happen to know that person well. You've already interacted with that person. I can make do without this doctor prefix also. Dear Vasant would be fine, absolutely fine. But if I have interacted well with that person,
in India, I know, the ego and all effects, but internationally when we discuss or something, so we prefer to take the name. So, but sometimes different culture is different. So, so this is always create confusion in my mind.
Professional. This is professional. The thumb rule is this: if I know that person well, I can just address that person by name. Okay, but for whatever reason, somehow certain things are ingrained into us because of our cultural context in which we are set, right? So even I know Ravi very well, and he happens to be many years younger than me. But then when it comes to a professional communication, I would always address him as dear Dr. Ravi Kiran. That's something that's got ingrained, and it is safe. It's a safe place to be in. Given the nature of how people interpret things and so on, it's a safe zone to be in. But when it comes to other countries, they're pretty informal. But once again, from one culture to another culture, there's a variation. And if you come to the Britishers, they are quite finicky about the prefixes that need to be added. Whereas the Americans are pretty cool about it, how you address them. They're absolutely okay with the first person reference. So you will have to look at it from a very cultural specific context, and then accordingly take a call. But yeah, professionally it is accepted. Frankly speaking, all the rules of professional communication tell you that this is absolutely fine. In fact, even hello, Vasant, also is considered in today's times as a professional one. Not hi, but hello is fine. But I'm not teaching you that. But given the Indian context, we still look at it as a very informal and casual way of addressing people.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Yeah, so you need to have certain phrases, when you have to thank someone, learn to thank people, when you're responding to their mails, when you're answering a question, ensure that you don't miss out on any of the questions which have been asked. So go in a sequence, exactly in the sequence in which they have asked those questions, the same sequence you can respond. Easier would be just copy the question if they're not very long ones, copy the question and respond to each of their questions. That would ensure that you are absolutely, your mail is complete in all respects. You're being very professional, right? You're being very, very specific with your answers. that you're not just combining 2-3 questions and giving one answer. You can still write same as the answer is the same as question number 2. You can write that, but ensure that you attend to that question. If you leave it, people are going to once again come back to you. You have not answered my 3rd question and so on. So in order to be complete in your communication, ensure that you follow the sequence in which they've asked you the questions. And any kind of delayed response from your end, please apologize. You need to apologize, right? So this is what we talk about, the etiquette part of it. Learning to say sorry, learning to say please, and so on. And always be very prompt with your response. I remember one of my bosses, he was a colonel, he was from the army, of course. So if I write by, say, after 5:30 in the evening, the next day morning when I went to workplace, I was very sure that by 9 o'clock a response would come from him, right? And if I wanted his immediate attention, I knew that just before lunch break, if I were to write to him, he would surely respond during the lunch break. That is what we call professionalism. So ensure that your team understands your email response time, whether it is in the mornings that you attend to emails, or in the afternoon, or in the late in the evening. But in their interaction with you, they should sort of understand that, okay, this is the time that has been earmarked by this person for email responses, and I'm sure to get a response around this time. So that kind of dependability should be developed, and that comes only with this practice of not being very random with your email responses, but being very professional. Set aside a time and then respond in that time, and people sort of understand your work culture. And the closing line also is very, very important in a mail. Okay, so usually what is the response that you're looking at? Look forward to your support, look forward to your response, look forward to hearing from you very soon. So usually it begins with look forward to what? What is it that you're expecting? And the closing, I've already told you about that. Best regards, best wishes. One of these can be, either of this can be used. And attachments, don't keep attaching large chunks of, documents. Ask them in case you happen to be sending them large files. Find out from them what is the process in which they would like to receive it, as an attachment, or probably through some other means they would like to receive it. So that is something that you need to ask. I see a lot of responses here. Is warm regards professional? Yes, sir. Yeah. Yes, it is accepted. Warm regards also is accepted professionally. Better address as dear sir, Madam Shivani. I didn't get you, Mr. Kuthuswamy. What is it that you're trying to say? Mr. Akash Tiwari, sincerely, all these are old ways of signing off your letters. But in emails, we only stick to, even letters also, we stick to, in a professional context, best regards, best wishes, warm regards. These are the accepted ones. The reason I'm saying this is when you have an easier option and which is accepted as being professional, it is easy, right? If you want to use yours sincerely, it is still accepted. But it's an old school. That's all is the reference. But absolutely okay. Okay, so someone is asking me here, if that person, you're not very sure of who that person is that you're addressing, whether it is the gender, you're not very sure. In such cases, make an effort to find out who that person is at the other end. Okay, it doesn't take very long in today's times. You have your social media, LinkedIn, and then, so many sources where you can, once you know the institution or the organization that the person belongs to, it's easy to trace information. So make that kind of an effort is the first suggestion that I give. The second one is, of course, you have the old ways of, dear sir / ma'am. What happens there? It's a disadvantage to us. The person realizes that, you are not even sure. It's more like a kind of a, what do you say, kind of a spam mail. which you send it across a marketing or a sales kind of a mail, which you send it across to everyone. So that you wouldn't want to people to think that way. So if you don't want that to happen, then you'll have to make that effort to find out who that person is. Yeah, I think I've answered a couple of people's queries here. So then you address the person as, so dear sir, okay, or ma'am. In this age of feminism, probably people will appreciate you better if you write it as dear ma'am and sir. Either way is fine, absolutely fine. This is old school, this is new school. Have I answered everyone's query? So you can ask people for their views, opinions, suggestions. So have a couple of phrases which are accepted ready with you so that you can use those expressions. It helps to have, a couple of them listed out so that you keep changing the way you ask people for their feedback or for their review and so on. You also need to ensure that you have solution-oriented mails and not problem-oriented mails. You don't say that I cannot come for the meeting after 5 p.m. Okay, I can attend the meeting if it is before 5 p.m. would be a better way to look at it. You understand the difference. So be people, when you're communicating professionally, ensure that you're communicating in such a way that you focus on solution. You give a solution to the problem which is there. You don't focus on what can't be done. Focus on what can be done. Right? You don't say that the project, I don't think we can finish the project in 1 month. Instead, you say the project can be finished completely and thoroughly if we can spend around 40 days on it. That would be helpful, which means by which date can you submit? You specify the date. Okay, I'll look at the, okay, ma'am, thank you. Okay, so these are only about the old ones that people have written. Then you also use euphemisms. What are euphemisms? Softer words which are being used. You don't say that bad performance. You say underperformance. So not meeting the requirements and so on. So you don't use words which sound very negative. You say downward growth. You don't say losses. So these are some of the words that are used in place of very harsh sounding words. So in a professional context, that you use euphemisms more, and that becomes people accept those kind of emails much better. So even if you're giving a negative review about something, if you use solution-oriented sentences and euphemisms along with it, people accept it in a much more gracefully than what they would otherwise. And in professional context, I'm sure most of you do that. You have your signature ready. So whatever goes with it, whatever you think is very important for people to know about you, any kind of website that you have, the address and all the other, whatever contact details that need to be there about you. So all of those can be part of your signature, your designation, which organization that you're part of. So keep it ready so that it doesn't take in more time for you when you're writing mails and sending across. We have already spoken about this, that state action that is required in the closing paragraph. So I spoke about how you need to divide the entire content into 3. One is setting the context for the mails. The second is giving the details. And then the third is the expected action. So these are mandatory for us in mail. And these are some of the aspects of communication that we keep in mind while drafting mails. Of course, grammar is very important, but then most important is these aspects of it. Ensure that you write in a very concise manner. Don't write very verbose mails wherein you're taking in too much of the receiver's time. So you'll have to be very, very precise with your communication. And you need to ensure that you're giving the correct information to people. And it has to be concrete, not abstract. So what do I mean by that? Suppose I say there's a good chance of our getting the deal. You're using something like this. Now, how do you define a good? There is a 30% chance that we might get the deal. Okay, or 70% chance that we might get the deal. Then people understand, right? So you'll have to be more concrete, because words like good, okay, bad, or significant can be interpreted very differently by different people. So in order to avoid that kind of ambiguity in communication, we sort of are very specific about that. The information that you're giving should be complete. Whatever, suppose I'm writing a mail regarding a meeting that is going to be held, I'll have to give details, of course, about the venue, date, and time. These are the main details. Theme is, of course, very important. And who are the people who are going to attend? If I don't have this information, people are going to keep coming back to me again and again, asking me a lot of questions. That should never happen. Whenever I write a mail, there should be no questions arising out of my mail. Multiple doubts are raised by people. You sort of understand that you have not done a thorough job of it, right? The information that you have provided is not complete. And of course, when all of these are there, it is bound to be very clear. When the mails are concise, when they are correct in passing on the information, they're very concrete and they're complete, automatically there's clarity in the mail that you've sent. And courtesy and consideration is the other aspect of it. And that would be the etiquette part of it. This is the professional part of it, right? Being very concise, being correct, being concrete, being complete, and being very clear. Now, what is the etiquette part of it? Be very respectful to people, whoever it is, whether they're your seniors or your juniors. But each sector, it is very, very different. If you look at the healthcare sector, there's a hierarchy. When there are senior doctors, nobody else speaks. It is the senior doctors who speak, right? So you just look at, and somewhere down, you have these students, medical students being there, and they're absolutely very, very respectful of people who are higher ups than them. Even if they're just junior residents, they're very, very respectful of them. So each profession, each sector, it's a very, very different take of what you call as courtesy. But generally, being respectful to people indicates that irrespective of who they are, whether they are senior in rank or junior in rank, okay? But there's a certain kind of respect that we give people, so that there should be no compromise on that. Okay, so consideration is the sensitivity part of it. Ensure that the other person is at ease in your company. That is what you need to look at. The way you write, people don't feel offended. People don't feel dismissed of totally. So that kind of a feeling should not be the end result of your mail. So that is something that you need to remember. So I just have a couple of mails for discussion here. It says, folks, colon, and then it says, it was fun working for, okay, from June 2019 to July 2021. Like most comma, it was a contractual position. Neither side wished to continue, renew contract. Look at the spelling of renew here, R-E-N-U-E, okay, and contract, and it's put in single colon. It was fun working, and I learned a lot more that happens in private academic institutions. HR finally settled payments this month and sent relieving letter today. All right. Okay. This is a declaration. This is nothing to do with Narsi Mundi as a brand. This is from elsewhere. Let's keep in touch. Contact information is at, there's a website that he has. Cheers, he says. Now, what do you think about this? What exactly is based on whatever we have discussed so far? What do you think is wrong with this?
Probably the person who's leaving the organization may be very unsatisfied. That the
No, in
cursory
terms
glance
of
that-
email etiquette, professional emails and email etiquette that we have discussed, right? What is it that is as per the etiquette that we have learned, not as per the etiquette that we have learned? Okay, I see a lot of responses here. Let me take. Okay. Etiquette is missing, ridiculous, disrespectful, and they unprofessional, very informal. Then informal view, no etiquette at all, too casual, sarcasm, very good, too much, not friendly. Okay, sarcasm is right. Okay, renew. All right. Okay, so those were the responses. No respect at all. The first thing, if you see, one minute, if you can see here, now the way of addressing itself is very unprofessional, right? If they've all been your colleagues, you could have addressed them as dear colleagues. That's a common term that you're using. That's absolutely accepted. And of course, we said there is no punctuation when you're after addressing the person, you don't have to use a comma. A colon, of course, should not be used at all. We need to understand when a colon is used. It was fun working, from June something. Like most, it was contractual position. So you can see that he's been sort of unhappy about whatever it is. Neither side wish to continue or renew contract. Now, this is a very negative approach, right, to the entire thing. And you should never put it on mails. One needs to understand that, whatever goes, I was telling you about the legal implications, not just the legal implication, it can have repercussions later. A lot of times HR people from one organization keep moving to another organization, and they're the ones who are going to decide whether you're going to be in or out, right? So given that, this would not really help that person at all, right, in furthering his professional ambitions. And a lot of grammatical errors that have been made, and very abrupt sentences is sort of, that disconnect that he feels probably mentally is seen in the way he is communicating to. And is talking about this was not required at all to be given to the to his colleagues. That is, HR finally settled payments this month and sent relieving letter today. That need not be shared with the. It's unprofessional to share this kind of information, and this also is totally unprofessional. The second paragraph that we are talking about, and the third paragraph, right? So all of this. And then he says, let's keep in touch. Contact information is that. And if you look at the website, it's more like, that he's trying to show off how many patent rights he has over, what all things. And that is what the entire thing is about. And then he says, cheers. Once again, very, very informal, right? So now these are mails which are a total put off. And all that people are going to do is read them and have fun. They're going to mock at you and nothing else. Nothing constructive is going to come out of it. Now, what is the objective in writing to them, and what is the outcome that he's looking at? Okay, so whatever is the objective, but the outcome, I'm not sure if he has any specific outcome in mind. And even if it is about, damaging the brand reputation, he's not been very successful in that, because people are only going to make fun of the way he has drafted the entire mail. So let's move on to the next one. Look at this particular one. Now, you don't understand the context of it at all. Replicates the remarks entered for any student, every other student in the exam. What replicates? Not sure about, what it is, unless you go to the subject and then you realize that this is what it is a reference to. The context is not set at all. So when the context for the mail is not set, very ambiguous, it becomes very ambiguous. Any others who may have faced the same problem may validate. Okay, what problem are you talking about? This problem with replication? Then you be specific about it. What does pay mean in the button within the remarks window? So now you're talking about the subject, about the replication that is happening, right? And then you're talking about this, another button which is there. So the subject line does not really reflect whatever he is talking about. Now look at this one. I'm not able to zoom anything. I think, when editing, I made some errors. And so you cannot probably see it very clearly. So here you see there is a lowercase and then there is an uppercase here. Now it totally puts you off the minute you see this kind of a mail, and then you see the paragraphs are not justified. Ensure that your paragraphs are justified when you're sending mails. What do I mean by that? Okay, suppose this is a complete paragraph. Okay. Now, what do I mean by justifying? Now this is left indented. You can see where I'm pointing to. Okay, when all Microsoft docs, any kind of doc, you'll find this. This is called justifying. So when I justify, you look at the way the paragraphs go. And when I don't justify, how does it go? It goes this way. They're uneven lines. Suppose I had more content here, you will understand. So in the given example that you're seeing, the paragraphs are not justified at all. So immediately, I am put off by those kind of uneven lines which are there. It doesn't look very professional to me, right? And so they're categorized under a different lot and not a very professional way in which it is being communicated. And you see a number of grammatical errors through the mail, right? And very abrupt and out of context lines too. Now, these are the kinds of mistakes that one needs to totally avoid. And you need to ensure that you follow all the rules that have been discussed so far. Mainly, the template has to be very clear, and you follow what is called a kind of a block format, with all literally being in chunks. It's divided into paragraphs, but very, very clear paragraphs, and they're like rectangles. And that is why it's called a block format. So you follow that. The presentation is very, very clear and very simple and very beautiful. And people take notice of those kind of. There's a lot more to emails, but I just hope that whatever has been discussed so far is of use to all the participants. Thank you so much for this opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Padma Shri.